Okay, great. You're alive.
Not seeing it yet.
Oh, you don't see it yet?
No.
Did you refresh your page? I'm checking. It says that you're live here. Checking on my phone.
Not seeing it.
Yeah, I just checked on my phone. You're live. Whoop.
Ah, got it.
Okay, great.
Got it.
All right, just let me know when you're done sharing.
Yeah, I'm going to just do a few shares now. I'm posting it to Facebook. I'm going to do a few shares and then we'll get rolling.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we're good. Whenever you're ready.
Hold tight. And take it, Greg.
Welcome, everyone. It's 6:15 on Monday night, and you're listening to the 236th installment of the Age Out Angels Radio Hour on www.hamiltonradio.net, Channel 2. I'm your host, Greg Rapport. If you're new to the show, I am the founder and executive director of Age Out Angels. We provide one-to-one mentors to vulnerable youth for the purpose of coordinating the care and services that they need to thrive. We try to help young people avoid some of the horrible pitfalls that they're likely to face when they don't have a proper safety net. And this program is brought to you every week at the same time, courtesy of the fine people here at Hamilton Radio who allow us to use this airtime. Ruben is on the big board tonight. Robin is producing. So good to have both of you with me every week. It's comforting. It really, truly is. And so good and comforting to have you guys listening at home from your computers, in your cars, in New Jersey, around the country, and even beyond. Now, please take a moment. If you're looking at us on Facebook or YouTube, I need you to hit the buttons for me. This show tonight is so important. Tonight and next Monday are the two most important shows I've ever done in my life. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but oh, goodness gracious, if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, whatever you can do to help me get this word out. It's relevant to everyone in your world. This topic applies to every geographic region. This is not limited. Child sex offenses are not limited to a specific geography. Goodness gracious, this needs to be shared. It really, really, really does, because there's a lot of misconceptions about this, and that's why this needs to be shared. So please do that. Share what you're hearing right now. Like and subscribe. And if you want to know about child welfare and community betterment, you know this is where you come to get the whole truth. And I promise what you will hear tonight will not be on the nightly news. Because tonight we're going to focus on keeping our children safe from child sex offenders. And we're going to do it with facts and research, not myths. The only reveal I'm going to tell you right now, because I'm going to leave you hanging on this for just a few minutes, we have to go over some things first, is if you've been railing your school board to ban books because you're afraid that your children will somehow turn gay from reading a book on tolerance, then boy, have you been exerting your efforts in the wrong direction. Full explanation in a few minutes. Don't go away. Little housekeeping first. Umbrella's inaugural. That's a tough word to say, inaugural. Power to end adverse childhood experiences. Okay, work this acronym with me, everybody. Ready? Power to end, P-E, adverse, A, childhood, C, experiences. Give me an E. What's that spell? It spells peace. Power to end adverse childhood experiences. It's an initiative that's a year-long series of educational workshops and family community engagements events all across the state of New Jersey for foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers, foster, adoptive, and kinship youth, and Department of Children and Family staff and their families, and anyone interested in child welfare. These are really important workshops. These workshops and community events culminate with a day-long health and wellness East Summit on June 1, 2024. So that's like a year away. But what I want to talk to you about right now is going to be coming up this Saturday. The goal of Peace is to create a shared child welfare community of healers, leaders, and future change makers. Now, the whole move here is to bring child welfare to the community level. Say that again now. Bring child welfare to the community level. And the funny thing about it is always we want to make sure that people on the community level have a seat at the table. And the people who are already on the community level say, why are you offering me a seat at my own table? And that's sort of something that hasn't been completely worked out yet. But nonetheless, this is a move to bring things to the community level. I heartily recommend it for anyone. Now, all of the events in the Peace Initiative are free for registrants. You got to go to Umbrella's website, okay? And there are educational events and there are family events. But I will tell you that the quickest way to register for the event on Saturday, which by the way is in Secaucus, okay, the quickest way I found to do that is to go to Facebook and go to Umbrella's page on Facebook, go down to their Peace Initiative. You scroll down probably just one or two entries till you get to the Peace Initiative. And there you have a click that takes you directly to the place where you would go to register for Saturday's workshop. Saturday's workshop, okay, is called ACE Interface and Be the Change. There's two parts to it. It's a day-long workshop. It begins with a light breakfast in the morning. a 3-hour ACE interface training that will provide education on childhood adversity and the neurological, epigenetic, intergenerational, and cultural implications childhood adversity can have on adulthood, which is, after all, when we meet a lot of these folks, right? So that's the first half of it. Then you break for lunch. So they give you a light breakfast. They also give you lunch, and then a 2-hour Be the Change workshop. And that builds on the previous 3-hour educational training, explains how to become a change maker in your community using the self-healing community's capacity building model. So there's sort of an evidence-based model that they're using to try to make that happen in some kind of a homogeneous way across communities. Now, the location for this is the Hudson County Schools of Technology, the high-tech school on the Frank J. Gargiulo campus in Secaucus, New Jersey. If you're anywhere near Secaucus, I'm not telling you anymore because they don't want you to just show up. You got to register. So register by going to Facebook, going to Embrella, Embrella, their Facebook page. Scroll down just a couple of things and click on the link that you'll see there. That will take you right to the ACE interface and Be the Change. That's 2 separate workshops on the same day. The morning is the ACE interface, where you learn all about that. And I got to tell you, I know none of us coined the term ACE, but ACE sounds too positive for what this is. I mean, you understand that adverse childhood experiences are the horrible things that leave people somehow frequently just, unable to progress as humans. I mean, that's sort of how serious all of this is. And of course, we're going to talk about adverse childhood experiences in a different way in just a few minutes when it comes to talking about child sex offenders. But first, let's just take one moment to talk about potential happiness here, okay? Because I want youth everywhere to know there's a ton of money out there. There really is. There's a whole lot of money. If you're a young person today, there's no reason that you have to be poor. None. Companies are hiring like crazy. Every company has, a vice president on multicultural affairs, on diversity and inclusion. This is it, man. This is when you can. It's not take advantage, but it is, but it's taking advantage of opportunity. It's where opportunity is there to make that money. But here's the thing. Here's the game. Okay, the game is. You have to finish high school and have skills. So you can't just go to a regular high school, cut school 3/4 of the time, somehow manage to figure out how to get a diploma out of the deal and walk around with that piece of paper, because that's not going to work. Here's what happens. You graduate high school, you walk into a college, you walk up to an admissions officer and you say, here's my high school diploma. And you know what the admissions officer does? He blows his nose with your high school diploma and then sits you down to take a qualifying examination. And you either have the skills or you don't. And if you don't, he tells you you have to waste like maybe half a year or a year or more to take remedial courses, frequently at your own expense. That's what happens when people graduate high school. The notion that somehow the graduating of a traditional high school is a rite of passage, an important rite of passage for you to go on into adulthood is no longer valid. It is not true. What you need are skills, and you need skills to get you past a level that would test in 10th grade. If you can get past a level that would test in 10th grade, a whole world of opportunity opens up for you. Okay? That's what happens. That's how this game is played. And if you ever find yourself, looking at it like a tough algebra problem or an essay or something that you have to write and asking the question, why I got to do this? The reason is because that's what they make you do. They want to know, can you solve problems when they happen? They want to know, can you write? They want to know if they throw something mathematically oriented in your direction, are you going to be able to field that ball? Okay, and that's what school tells a prospective employer. And plus, There are a lot of basic skills, like if you go into engineering, you learn geometry, you learn how to measure. There are a lot of important basic skills that get deployed when you're earning more money, you see? So you got to get through that. This is not why I got to do this. This is thank you, sir. May I have another? Let me do this as fast as possible so that I can get out there and start making that money. And that's where the Bridges to Employment program comes in, because we offer you the fastest route to either getting your GED, your high school equivalency, now it's called, or getting the brush up skills you need because you have a high school diploma that isn't worth it. Okay, so you need brush up skills. We have the fastest route for you to do that. School has never been like this before. And I know school is the hardest part to get through. If you can get through this, if you can get through the HSC, or if you can get through your brush up skills, because let's face it, the reason you need brush up skills is because you didn't go every day on the way to getting your diploma, right? That's what happened, is you ditched plenty. So now you're here, but we can get it done faster than anywhere else. Call me, private message me. Greg@ageoutangels.org is my email. 609-306-0821 is my phone number. If you have any relationship with the child welfare system, give me a call. Hey, I heard from our old friend Marsha Robinson Lowry's organization, ABC, A Better Childhood, because they are about to rock and roll. Let's see if I can get Ms. Robinson Lowry on the show in the next couple of months. They are going on behalf of 10 children in Indiana. Lawsuit has just been filed against the governor and a child welfare director whose cuts to the agency's programs have been described as inevitably resulting in child deaths. Indiana fails to provide foster children with the care they need, undercounting caseloads, failing to develop enough foster homes, and ignoring the treatment needs of children who come into care. Instead, children's placements are based on whatever home is available rather than what home is suitable, and children too often wind up in institutions. DCS's systemic failures. DCS is Department of Children and whatever that S stands for. Systemic failures are well known to state officials who have failed to act to address those failures. It's time that DCS is finally held accountable. The plaintiffs are 10 children in foster care, representing the general class, are you ready, of over 11,000 children in foster care in Indiana. The lawsuit includes a general class and a subclass, the Americans with Disabilities Act subclass, which represents children with emotional, psychological, cognitive, or physical disabilities. Indiana is failing to provide children with stable, nurturing, family-like homes. That's the complaint. A lack of foster homes means children's placements are based on whatever home is available rather than what home is suitable, and children often wind up in institutions. Other problems include frequent moves among homes and institutions, which increase trauma for children already removed from their family homes and often separated from their siblings, their school, and their community. DCS is also unable to meet the needs of thousands of foster children with disabilities whose involvement in the child welfare system places them at a greater risk of institutionalization. Also, the child welfare system relies too heavily on institutionalization, particularly for children with even minor behavioral problems. Oh, that's a huge problem, with many children often placed in locked, restrictive, poor quality, and jail-like facilities. The system is not set up to provide children the necessary services and treatment they need. Foster children's medical, mental health, and physical needs remain unmet due to irregular, infrequent assessments and the lack of sufficient and available resources. DCS fails to recruit and retain an adequate number of caseworkers. Overworked caseworkers struggle to make important but difficult decisions about the right services to provide. They face having too many children to serve and too few resources and too little training. DCS's termination of parental rights practices caused children to remain in foster care for years, caught in limbo between the reunification and adoption. And finally, DCS's treatment of foster parents causes foster parents to stop accepting placements, discourages foster parents from renewing their licenses, and deters prospective foster parents from seeking a license. So what are their goals of their advocacy? This case, by the way, if you start looking it up, is Annabelle B. v. Holcomb. Annabelle B. v. Holcomb. Request that the court permanently prohibit DCS from subjecting children in the general class and the ADA subclass to further harm, and from threatening their safety and well-being through practices that violate their rights. The case seeks an order directing DCS to, among other things, establish processes to ensure that children receive timely and appropriate mental and medical treatment, lower caseloads of individual workers to professional standards, and accept a caseload counting methodology that accurately reflects workload, maintain accurate medical records for all foster children, conduct face-to-face visits with all foster children at least once per month and at least twice per month for children on trial home visits, inform foster parents of the foster child's medical needs prior to placement, establish a policy that prohibits retaliation against foster parents. Goodness gracious. Establish a policy that prohibits retaliation against. Who's retaliating? Ensure that children with disabilities have an opportunity to receive services in their home communities. Not so much moving around, it makes it so much better. Develop a process to properly match children with safe and appropriate foster home placements. And finally, contact with an outside entity to conduct a needs assessment that includes a plan with mandatory benchmarks. And we wish them luck. We do know one thing for a fact. We know that when ABC comes in, two things have happened. Number one, all possible alternative remedies have been tried or considered. Okay? This is not an organization that goes to court frivolously. So number one is they try. And number two is they usually win. So let's see what happens, huh? Maybe we can get Marsha Robinson Lowry on the program at some point in the next couple of months to talk more about it. Okay, kids, buckle up. Inside the mind of a sex offender. Oh my God. Hey, 988, before we even get started, 988. There are so many triggers in this. I'm serious. There are so many triggers in this. You know, if it starts to take you down a spiraling path, just stop listening to the show and call 988. Do it. Talk to a trained peer advocate. Tell them what, that you've been listening to this show about inside the mind of a child sex offender, and it's triggering you. Let them know. Okay? All right, do that. I may do the same before the show's over. Incredibly eye-opening whole day training last week. It's called Inside the Mind of a Sex Offender. I'm here to tell you that you probably 75% of everything you ever thought is, I don't know, wrong, but certainly marginally misled, Presenter was an extremely knowledgeable subject matter expert who I hope to get on the show as well, named Corey Jewel Jensen from the Portland, Oregon area. And she has done essentially a lifetime of research centered around clinical evaluation of sex offenders. It's amazing to me that a person could actually do that kind of close work, and it turns out like she was part of a lot of the I'm going to say formative aspects of getting this research. It takes years. It took them years apparently to get the research part of this right. How to draw detailed info out of sex offenders, to learn how to ask the right questions in the right sequence, in the right way, to get the answers, and worked with psychiatrists and psychologists and everyone in between. And so she's been working on this, for pretty much her entire career. And what they discovered is just frankly jaw-dropping. So much so that I honestly don't know where to begin. What boggles the mind is, with all the talk that we hear in this day and age about protecting our children, why this training, what I'm about to tell you tonight, why this training isn't everywhere, just boggles the mind. That's an homage to David Susskind, by the way. Quick stat, the catch rate is 3%. Let that sink in. The catch rate is 3%. This is a crime that law enforcement misses 97% of the time. 3%. By the time they're caught, okay, so you ready? This is like the first big bombshell. By the time they are caught, many child sex offenders may have committed like 200 to 300 crimes. Something I had never considered before, and I wonder if you have either, is the amazingly extreme breadth and duration over which most of these crimes takes place. This is huge. See, what happens is, and the offender can only be charged with the crime that he's caught doing, you know? So you take the crime that he's caught doing, which is probably a felony, right? Add a plea bargain to that mix, okay? And now he's committed 200 felonies, but that one that he's charged for could end up being knocked down to a single misdemeanor and time served. Oh yeah, SVU. SVU only arrests only 10%. The conviction rate's 3%. The SVU arrests only 10%. This is a very, very, very difficult crime. Very difficult. So, all right. So in a nutshell, what's the best way I could describe a pedophile? Is indescribable. Don't even try. Don't even try. If you think you can look at somebody and know, please. It could be anyone, number one. Statistically speaking, if you're sitting in a room full of people, now you have enough knowledge from what I've just told you to look around the room and try to decide who the sex offender is, because chances are there is one, you know? So like if you're bored, it could help pass the time because there is a good chance, especially in a crowded room, somebody is, and it might not even be male. There are female sex offenders too. We'll get to that later. We're also going to talk about how the con works. Okay? So there's a huge part to being a child sex offender, which involves this massive con. All right, and we're going to unwrap that con. Okay? But the first thing that I want you to understand is this is not about the guy, the boogeyman who jumps out of the bushes and kidnaps your children. That is such a minute percentage. It is 0.5%. So we're not talking about that. Don't focus on that. This is not the guy with the van and the Snickers bars, the candy, and the pictures. No. Stop it. Stop getting overwhelmed by politics, forgive me, and start looking at the reality of this situation, okay? It's not a gay thing. It doesn't matter if the person was abused when they were a child necessarily, although that can be a factor, okay? But this is not about gay, not about straight, not about gender, not about race. This is about age. This is a crime of age. Okay. Now, what are crimes? What are crimes that people are actually aware of? For example, most people don't consider fondling is certainly the same crime as having sex, right? Penetration. You know, but according to the University of Chicago, it's on par. It is among the 3 subsets under sexual assault, under the umbrella heading of sexual assault. You know, the other 2 being rape and incest. Now, there's another one, statutory rape, which is also in that group. And I think statutory rape and fondling are very similar in that in both instances, fondling or statutory rape, it can be non-forced. It's just that the child is below the age where they can give consent, right? So if a child molester goes into a police investigation with a 14-year-old and says, no, I'm not in any trouble, she consented, well, he's dead right there on the spot because she is too young. to consent, okay? Not true that all sex crimes are about power and control. Maybe an element, but not a reason. Here's the thing. To have sex with children, overwhelming percentage needs to be aroused, sexually aroused by children. They may exert control to keep getting away with it. Yeah, that can happen, okay? But they have to be aroused by having sex with children. The ones who are married, for example, and many are, they use marriage and family, as their beard. But they confess, pardon me, that when they're having sexual relations with their wives, they're actually thinking about a child. And many have their own children or stepchildren. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to this thing. Some abuse their own children or stepchildren. Easy access, right? One guy who was a teacher abused 90 kids. When he was asked why he never abused his own children, he said, well, that would be wrong. So there. He's a man of standards. Okay, so now it's not, right? It's not the guy who jumps out of the bushes. It's not the guy who was abused when he was a child. It's not about power. It's not about control. It's not about, vicious evil, all that stuff. Usually, okay, those don't, it's not monolithic, okay? But this is really the dominant factor here and what you got to watch out for. How does this start? How does this, what manifests into pure evil, right? I mean, seriously, this ruins people's lives. This does. If you want to talk adverse childhood experiences, this could be the ace of the aces. So how does something that just oozes evil in this way, how does it have its origin in potential innocence? How is that possible? And it seems to come a lot from things like show and tell. You're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, right? Maybe 7, maybe 8. I don't know. But that's why it could be anyone, you see, no matter what color, religion, socioeconomic background we come from. None of that stuff matters. It can start with an innocent game of show and tell. So come with me now. Go back to your childhood with me. Come with me. You did it. You did it at least once. Who was it with? Was it with the neighbor kid? Was it with a cousin? Right? It's only natural. It is no thing. It really is no thing. And maybe it was 1-to-1, maybe just you and the other person. Maybe it was male, female, male, male, female, female. Who knows? Who cares? Maybe it was a slightly larger group. Maybe it was sort of like your group of friends all discovered it at the same time on the same day. Go on, explain it. Try to explain it. You can't. It's just a moment in time of curiosity, and it's perfectly healthy. And it's they say that sometimes the way this turns is how an adult reacts to, like, catching the children doing that. Do you go ballistic? Do you go nuclear on your kid, or do you just kind of allow it to be a part of a moment in time? We used to say that every action that your kid makes, especially the more creative ones, are not a career in the making. You don't have to overreact every time. But here's what happens. In that group, all right? In that group were two people, you and somebody else. Somebody likes it more than everyone else. Because, see, everyone else in that group, you do it once, maybe you do it twice, and then, well, I don't know, somebody's mother brings home Chutes and Ladders, and then so did you go out and play that? That's the new game, and you forget completely. about the thing that happened before that. And then after that, you go ice skating and or roller skating, depending on the season. And so, yeah, it just goes on. But that one person might not. That person might not. Maybe in your group, that person was a year or two older. Maybe that person, when you were doing that show and tell, show me yours, touch mine, I'll touch yours. Maybe that person got an erection, and then everyone went, "Ooh, look at you! You're so cool. How do you? I can't make mine do that." Those sort of little things that suddenly put one person in a position where they start to really like it more than the other kids. And we're talking about infantile brains here. I'm not infants for real, but we're talking about, so brains that are so incredibly undeveloped they write books about it. Okay? So, that's why we're actually well, let me finish the next thing and then I'll tell you. So here's what happens then. Everyone else goes on to play Chutes and Ladders, but that person who really likes it, right? That person may look for other people to continue to play that game with. Okay? As that fuels and grows and continues to feed on that person's something in their brain, okay, that's giving them something, arrested development kicks in and they're there. They're just there in that space. And that is the age group that they want to have sex with. There it is. Not all that other shit. Sometimes it's that other shit, but that's all it is. It can start with something as innocent as show and tell. It's remarkable, isn't it? It gets totally crazier. Okay? From here, it's going to be like what I just said on steroids. All right? So get ready. And again, oh man, if any of this triggers 988, okay? 988, you got to do that for me. 988. And please, 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 you guys, you got to share this. All right? You got to like, subscribe, and share. Got to do this. Right? 3 stages. There's 3 stages to this process. By the way, that little kid who then essentially becomes a child sex offender, right? The little kid who likes it. And he then starts to encourage other little kids to play it. That's not a game anymore. You see? That's not a game anymore. But what they're asking is that you don't refer to a child as a child sex offender. If possible, can we not brand a kid for life for something he does when he's 7 or 8 or 9 years old, right? So let's try not to go there. All right. The 3 stages to this process, the whole process involves the pre-offense. Okay, that's all of the groundwork that gets laid before anything offensive actually happens. Next is the offending phase, which is basically, in a nutshell, that's moving from horseplay to fondling. Okay? And the 3rd phase is called damage control. Subheading there is deny, 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 and discredit. And we're going to talk about all that in just a little bit. Okay? And so 3 phases: pre-offense, the offending phase, and damage control. All right? And what is absolutely petrifying about this, and I mean petrifying, and you should be right now, you should be as nuts about this as I was when I learned the level of prep and technique that goes into this. Your child may be getting hit with multiple techniques at once and not even realize it. These pervs are so good, so subtle, so polished at what they do. Now listen to what I'm about to say next, okay? Listen to what I'm about to say next. They are so professional at capturing your child. You almost have no defense. They're that good, okay? And it goes much deeper than that. Because if you try to report it, guess who could end up vilified? I believe I said only 3% get convicted, right? So fuck you and me. This is so awful. 3 stages: the pre-offense, the offending, and damage control. Here's a quote. I mean, those 3 stages have lots of moving parts, and that's what we need to unpack, because you need to know the extensive nature of what we're talking about here, okay? So here's a quote. Here's a quote. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to pause for a minute because this has to sink in, all right? It has to sink in. This is a quote from a child sex offender who offended somewhere between, I don't know, 90 and 300 kids. Your kids like me better than you because I give them what you don't. There. Suck it, parents, because you'll never be able to measure up to this guy. You'll never be as good. You'll never be as cool. These pervs work at this 24/7. You can't take your kid to every ball game, can you? You can't take your kid to every ski resort. One perv described himself as a friend with car keys and cash. Fight that. Fight that. I dare you. I dare you. And they're not jumping out of the bushes. They're not jumping out of the bushes. A lot of this begins where? On the internet. These guys are pros. So many times. Once they begin to act on their urges. Okay? Once they begin to act on their urges, the internet is a storehouse of how-to information. For example, a person may feel the urges. Am I the only person here who's ever wanted to rob a bank? I mean, come on. It used to be where the money is when we were kids, not anymore. But you don't act on that urge, right? It's glorified in media, the Dillinger Gang, the third, all that kind of stuff, when bank robbers were sort of glorified celebrities among the public because they were the anti-hero, kind of character. But you don't do it because you know the difference between right and wrong, right? A person may feel the urges, but they don't exactly know how to go about it, or know somewhere in the back of their mind that it's wrong, right? But they don't want to get caught. Guess what? There are whole books written about the 3 stages I'm about to describe. But within each of those stages, there's a lot of room for technique as the perv learns to utilize their own strengths while gently exploiting the child's weaknesses and ultimately avoiding detection. So slick. Now, you can't say that a teacher is more likely to be a sex offender than a father. All right. But we do know that some professions lend themselves to easier access, and so therefore may be attractive to people with that proclivity. But what's on the internet besides the methodology? Okay, put the whole methodology aside for a minute because we're going to talk about that at length. But here's what I want you to understand about the books and things like that are on the internet. The brainwashing in those books is a justification for this kind of maladaptive behavior. Okay, the whole beginning of all these books is they're referring to molestation as a gentle loving of a child. They recharacterize molestation as, they recharacterize the act of perversion as an act of love. So what they do is they just soften this offender up so that he's free to absolve him or herself from guilt, while satisfying this particular urge. And you know what we're talking about here? I know a lot of you, when we talk about sex offenses, you're thinking about teenagers, and that's true. Something does happen there. 12-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds are in that category. But you got to consider the 4-year-olds. You really do. You got to consider the 3-year-olds, the 4-year-olds, the 5-year-olds. Well, I'll tell you in a second, just how vulnerable they are. All right. So one of the first steps Um, for many is the internet to learn the how-to. Okay. Next step, child selection. They have to ask themselves, what do I like? Age has a lot to do with it. There are sexual abusers who abuse senior citizens. There are sexual abusers who abuse dead people. Bestiality, part of maladaptive behavior. They have this urge, this attraction that is somehow born out of some element that evolved into this perversion. But just knowing who you like, age or natural attraction, that's not enough. Where can I gain access? It doesn't work without access. How can I become a pillar of the community? In charge of the church's youth group. Very common choice. Sorry, religion. There's no way you get out of this alive. No way religion gets out of this alive. I mean, it's just insane what's going on there. One of my transgender acquaintances said to me the other day, you never heard a transgender person get accused of all the same, garbage that the church gets accused of. But in this case, I'm a little bit more lenient on the church, and I'll tell you why. Because it's just that these guys are so slick. The church youth group is a common choice also because that's something they can start at a young age. You could be a teenager and be in charge of a church youth group. You could be in charge of the younger kids when you're a teenager, right? Or you could be a 20-year-old. And so I'm not 100% sure how you can, just hold the church 100% responsible. These guys, I will tell you something, because I have seen these church youth group leaders get interviewed, and even at a young age, I mean 20s, or maybe even high school age, they are so slick. They are so slick. They are so rehearsed. You can't blame intelligent people for falling for the con. That's really what it is. So now you've decided the age group you're looking for. You've sort of looking around to see who you may be attracted to within that age group. You've gotten yourself access. Right? You're a camp counselor in the summertime. You're running the church youth group. You're volunteering at the community rec center 2 nights a week. And everybody loves you. Everybody thinks you're the greatest guy who ever lived. How did they survive without you? And now you're looking to see, of that crop, of that pipeline that you're developing of possible victims, who's the most vulnerable? Who's the one that you're attracted to? It combines checks those boxes. You have to be attracted to them, but you have to be able to, who's the one you're most likely to get away with it? Okay. Definitely, who's the most vulnerable? Definitely any youth in foster care, or any youth actually under no real specific supervision. A youth with past arrests. Poor, you need money for clothes, you need money for just a way out. You want to get a way out. Single parent, lack of supervision, all these things that add to the potential ease at which this child could be conditioned, right? And then this person, once they select their potential victim, now they get to work on, what is it I have to do to get them? Okay, now remember, all of this is taking place before anything criminally offensive happens. Nothing that I've said so far is a criminal offense. Okay. Part of the process also is they may have to groom the mother, or the whole family for that matter. There was one admitted offender, okay, who abused a boy for 9 years, okay? And only twice in the 9 years did that abuse take place when no one else was in the house. He had the whole family spun around his finger to the point where he could abuse that child with people home, and no one suspected him. That's how good they are. That's why I'm telling you this stuff. I'm not trying to tell you or teach you how to become a child sex offender. You don't need me for that. You'd go online anyway. I'm trying to show you what you need to watch out for and what you got to stop wasting your time watching out for. Okay? Because what's going to happen once the child sex offender identifies that target child, okay, then the process begins to slowly separate the child more and more from the family and engage, in some fun wrestling, touchy things. You wrestle, go away for a weekend. Don't worry, single mom. I'll take them out of your hair for a weekend so you could spend time with your other two kids, or so you could go away and have a life, right? So you're a godsend. What did we ever do without you? You know? And then meanwhile, the sex offender is slowly, insidiously conditioning your kid. Like they tell each other jokes, right? They tell each other jokes, and then week or two later, tells your kid a sex joke. It's all part of the jokes. It's just part of the sex. Little by little, through that, he starts to bring the kid into his confidence, telling him now things like these. This is our little secret. These are secrets that we don't tell this to anybody. This is us. This is our special group. This is our little secret, and begin to separate what he can and cannot tell his parents. There was one sex offender who said he would be, he'd be with the kids for a few hours, and in the last hour he would always return to normal. Like the reason the kids came, I think it was maybe a rec center or ice rink. The reason the kids came to that place so that when they got in the car, they wouldn't look like something weird had just happened to them. They would look like they were getting in the car from the place that they were intended and the activity they were intended to be doing in the first place. So they all have their ways of slowly but surely making sure they're separating the child from you. And an offender can have different youth primed at different stages of this process. A pipeline. This is like a sales pipeline. It's a pipeline of candidates, in various stages of grooming. And it reminds me so much of a professional selling process, how a person who is selling an item brings a potential buyer from the place where they didn't even know they wanted it to buying it and can't live without it. Okay, that's what all of these discussions and conversations reminded of, that high level of professionalism. Okay, so it moves from there, all right, from there into the offensive phase. Okay, the offensive phase now, that innocent touching, now that starts to include private parts, right? Discussion about the private parts, possibly exposure to porn, right? Depending on the age group. And the touching starts to evolve into more of a sexual nature. And can follow then all the way through to whatever the intention is of the criminal in that situation. And that brings us immediately to the damage control phase. Deny, and discredit. Part of selecting your victim is selecting someone who no one will believe. And as far as I am concerned, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you know that they know that they're committing a crime. They lay a multi-layered escape package down before they touch the kid. Sometimes this escape package is layered over a whole parish or certainly a congregation, but even a whole town, depending on the size of the town. And they do it in 3 ways. Okay? This is damage control. Way number 1, they work on the kid. You'll get in as much trouble as me if you tell. You never said no. You must have wanted it. You lied to your parents. No one will ever believe you again. That's number 1. That's just number 1, working on the kid. Number 2, they work on the community. People will stand up in court on their behalf. Stand up in court. I am totally serious. They frequently have a wife and a family standing in the neighborhood. The neighbors can't believe it. You know, the one where the neighbor is always getting interviewed by the channel, the news station, and he goes, I can't believe it. He was such a nice guy. Yes, that's what they are. The guy who you think is a weirdo, he might not be. The one who's a really nice guy, definitely don't let him out of your sight. Okay, that's the second one. They groom the whole community. They got the whole town hoodwinked, and certainly the neighborhood. Okay, all right. And number 3, this will kill you. And this is where you lose. Okay, they are completely rehearsed for the police interview. Completely rehearsed. Now, you've just lodged a complaint on behalf of your 5-year-old child. Your 5-year-old child has to give a statement. This is a traumatized kid, number 1. How many times do you think that 5-year-old kid's facts will change in the process, of giving that statement and trying to convict a child molester? Now compare that to the unbelievably rehearsed delivery that this professional con man will give to the police. 3%. And do you understand, this is not a handful of freaks. This is an industry practiced by professionals. That's all the time we have for this tonight. I need a shower. You probably do too. Next week in part 2. Part 2 is the bullshit effect. We're going to talk about that. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. She was asking for it. Did you see the way she dressed? He begged me. He made me do it. I didn't want to. It was a moment in time. It was just a weak moment. All bullshit. All bullshit. You know why you have sex with a 4-year-old? You have sex with a 4-year-old because you want to have sex with a 4-year-old. Nothing else. Nothing else is a mitigating circumstance. Sick bastards. We're also going to talk about the importance of using a polygraph to actually get at the truth. This is actually kind of fascinating. And we're going to talk about what's the prognosis for recidivism and the various models to try to show that. And finally, what can we do? Because you can't just leave this out there hanging. A guide for parents, okay? That's all coming up next week. Plus, a report back from Umbrella's ACE Interface and Be the Change event that I hope you all meet me at. So there we have it. That's all the time we have for tonight. I want to thank you for listening at home. I want you to join me next week. Make sure you do for part 2 of child sexual offenders. Thanks to our producer, Robin, our engineer, Ruben. Music provided by Mozart. I am too upset tonight to do the usual joke. I just can't. Stay safe, everybody. Until next time, remember, and this is what's keeping me going right now, it's only Monday, so there's still plenty of time to make this week the best week ever. Good night, everyone.